Tonight, we drift into the uneasy quiet between two monstrous egos, Hitler and Stalin, where fear whispered louder than gunfire, and the war was lost long before the last bullet fell. You open your eyes to a world that smells faintly of coal dust and boiled cabbage. It's early 1941, somewhere in Central Europe, and you are standing at the edge of a map that hasn't decided what it wants to be yet. Lines are drawn and redrawn in ink that never quite dries. The air hums with rumor, radio static, and the faint anxiety of men in too many uniforms. Somewhere, a stray dog barks at a column of soldiers who look like they're marching nowhere in particular. You stand very still. You're about to watch history unravel itself, one exhausted heartbeat at a time. The morning light is thin, tired, and slightly suspicious, like it's seen too much paperwork. You breathe in and catch a hint of diesel and wet leather. The world feels both enormous and very small. This is Europe at the edge of Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion in human history. Though, for now, you wouldn't know it from the quiet hum of trucks and the slow rhythm of boots on cobblestone. Someone is frying onions 2 doors down, and the smell feels almost treasonous. Adolf Hitler, somewhere in his wolf's lair far to the west, is convinced that his greatest enemy, Joseph Stalin, is both weak and waiting. Historians still debate whether Hitler truly believed the Soviet Union would collapse in a few months, or whether he simply couldn't imagine anyone else being more stubborn than he was. You'll find, as this long, sleepy story unfolds, that underestimating stubborn people is a recurring human hobby. As you walk through the narrow streets of a German border town, you can feel the tension rising like steam. Posters with sharp fonts and perfect symmetry scream about destiny and purity. But the shopkeeper you pass just looks tired. His hands are stained with ink, not blood. His daughter coughs in the doorway. History likes to pretend that everyone in times of war was heroic or hateful, but most were just trying to get through a Tuesday without trouble. The trains never stop. They hiss and groan like restless animals. Inside, soldiers sit half asleep, dreaming of farms, girls, or just a meal that isn't gray. You walk alongside the tracks for a while, boots crunching gravel, and overhear a young officer whispering to another, "They say the Russians don't even have proper planes." He says it the way someone says it won't rain, before walking into a thunderstorm. Hitler's high command is obsessed with speed. Strike fast, strike deep, strike before Stalin can blink. What they forget is that Russia has a habit of blinking very slowly. The Soviet landscape itself becomes an ally: mud, forests, frost. You can almost hear the future whispering through the wind. Don't get comfortable. You pass a row of bicycles leaning against a fence. One of them has a newspaper wedged into its spokes, fluttering like a wounded bird. The headline boasts of victories in the Balkans. But if you look closely, you'll notice something strange. The font is smaller than usual. Even the propaganda seems tired now. At a nearby cafe, a group of old men are drinking something that smells halfway between coffee and despair. They talk about 1914 like it was last week. They say Hitler's eyes shine like a prophet's. You imagine that kind of shine up close. It probably feels more like a fever. And then there's Stalin. Far away in Moscow, he's pretending to ignore the warnings. His generals whisper. His spies write frantic notes. But he waves them away. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's fear. Maybe it's the strange paralysis that comes when you've built your power on paranoia and suddenly realize you can't trust anyone. Not even the truth. An obscure tidbit: Soviet radio operators in early 1941 were required to use code words that changed daily. One day the signal for attack might be harvest, and the next it might be piano. Somewhere out there, an entire battle was once delayed because someone forgot the word for potato. You stop to watch a woman hang laundry in the courtyard. The sheets flap in the wind like white flags. She hums something old, maybe a lullaby, maybe a prayer. It sounds out of place in this mechanical world of tanks and timetables. You realize that history, at least the kind that matters, is always happening quietly, in kitchens, in breaths, in the space between one man's orders and another's obedience. Before you drift too far, a gentle reminder. If you've somehow made it this far awake, bless you. Go ahead and like this video, if only to encourage other sleepless wanderers. Maybe comment your location and local time, so we know who else is pacing through history tonight. And now, as the engines hum and the maps stretch eastward, you probably won't make it through this day. But that's all right. The war won't, either. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. The soldiers begin to move. The trucks cough to life. You feel the air vibrate with the sound of inevitability. You start walking east, into a story that will burn itself into every history book and every sleepless conscience. The dawn smells different here. The fields outside Brest-Litovsk are pale with dew, the kind that clings to boots and memories alike. You step through the wet grass, hearing the dull thump of artillery in the far distance. It's not quite war yet, more like thunder rehearsing. Somewhere behind you, a crow laughs. Crows always seem to know when humans are about to do something stupid. You walk past a line of soldiers staring eastward. Their uniforms are crisp, their faces too young to understand what kind of story they've joined. One of them adjusts his helmet and mutters that the Russians will collapse in 2 weeks. Another says they'll be home by harvest. History will later note, with dry amusement, that both men were wrong by approximately 4 years and an empire. The map unfolds across your mind like a nervous secret. Germany's armies stretch in a long, metallic snake toward the Soviet border. Millions of men, thousands of tanks, an orchestra of arrogance. Behind them, supply trucks groan under barrels of fuel, crates of ammunition, and too few winter coats. It's June. Winter seems like a myth right now, the kind of thing that happens to other people. You walk alongside the convoy for a while, letting the rhythm of the engines lull you. The world becomes a soft drone of motion. The soldiers joke about vodka, women, and how much faster their tanks are than the Russian ones. None of them mention fuel shortages or broken supply lines. Not yet. You stop by a ditch to rest. A field mouse scurries out, blinking up at you, before vanishing into the grass. Is probably smarter than half the generals involved. One of those generals, Halder, is back in Berlin writing in his diary about Hitler's infallible intuition. Historians still debate whether that was sincere admiration or the literary equivalent of eye-rolling. You take a sip from a canteen that tastes faintly of metal and soap. It's not unpleasant, just oddly sterile. Around you, the world feels too quiet for what's coming. Stalin's border troops are asleep or pretending to be. His officers still believe that Germany wouldn't dare attack so soon after signing the non-aggression pact. One might call that optimism. Others might call it denial. There's a moment, just before all chaos begins, where even the birds stop singing. You can feel that moment now. The sun rises, the insects hum, and for one impossible second, Europe holds its breath. Then the sky erupts. Artillery fire tears through the horizon like a sheet being ripped apart. Planes scream overhead, dropping promises of ruin. You stumble back, covering your ears, though it doesn't help. The sound isn't just loud, it's personal. It feels like the earth itself is trying to shake you awake. The invasion has begun. Operation Barbarossa. June 22, 1941. the largest military invasion in human history, and within it, the smallest, saddest stories you'll ever find. You find yourself standing near a farmhouse as soldiers rush past. A boy no older than 16 tries to milk a cow in the chaos. The cow doesn't care about politics. It just wants breakfast. The boy mutters something about crazy Germans and keeps working. Somewhere, a bullet will find him by sunset. But not yet. You follow the troops through the dust and smoke. A tank stalls, another catches fire. A lieutenant curses under his breath, then remembers the microphones and switches to polite fury. It's all moving too fast. The plan was supposed to be perfect. Plans, though, have a sense of humor. Here's your historical fact for this stretch of the nightmare. Within the first few days, Germany destroyed over 3,000 Soviet aircraft, most of them still on the ground. The Luftwaffe had air supremacy. For a brief, dazzling moment, Hitler's dream of quick victory looked real. But as you walk deeper into this chaos, you notice something the generals don't. The roads. Muddy, rutted, endless. The tanks move slower now. Trucks sink. Horses die. The men curse the weather, though the weather hasn't even begun to fight back yet. By evening, the first rain falls. You take shelter under a tree that looks older than either ideology. It creaks softly in the wind, a witness to human foolishness. You think about Stalin, sitting in his dacha, refusing to believe the reports. He's frozen, silent, smoking one cigarette after another. Fear has a strange flavor. It can taste like disbelief. An obscure tidbit. Soviet propaganda offices in the first week of the invasion kept printing leaflets claiming, "All is under control." Some were still distributing them after the city's telegraph lines were already cut. Somewhere in Moscow, a bureaucrat probably died insisting the typewriter be cleaned. The night falls heavy. Fires burn along the horizon. You lie back in the grass, too tired to care about sides or slogans. Above you, the stars look indifferent, as they always do. You realize that no matter how many wars are fought under them, they'll keep shining on the same frozen rivers, the same empty fields, the same exhausted dreams. A truck passes by, headlights slicing the darkness. The driver is singing softly, off-key, something about home. It's almost beautiful. You close your eyes and think, not for the first time, that history is just the long story of people trying to get back to somewhere safe. You're drifting now. Your breath slows. The world fades to a low hum of engines and rain. Sleep if you can. The war has only just begun. You wake to the sound of boots in mud. It's not a pleasant sound, rhythmic, squelching, vaguely wet, as if the earth itself is trying to swallow the soldiers whole. You blink through a fog that smells like burned rubber and wet bread. It's July 1941 now, and you've been walking east for weeks. The front line is less of a line and more of a smear. Every sunrise brings a new version of the map. You pass a convoy of horse-drawn wagons, yes, horse-drawn. The Reich, with all its mechanized dreams, still needs horses. The irony is not lost on you. One horse sneezes in your direction. You sneeze back. A small, absurd act of diplomacy. The men around you are thinner now. Their laughter, when it happens, sounds hollow, like coins dropped into a dry fountain. The officers still bark about destiny, but it's quieter than before. The dust, though the dust never stops talking, clings to your boots, your hair, your lungs. You breathe history, and it tastes like chalk. You stop near a half-destroyed village. A few huts still stand, crooked and defiant. A woman sweeps her doorstep as if that will keep the war out. She glances at you, not with hatred, but with the weary politeness reserved for passing storms. She offers you water. You accept. This warm, slightly gritty, and the best thing you've tasted in days. The soldiers move on, but you linger. You watch her hang a single shirt on a line. It's patched and faded. You think about how wars always seem to find the people with the least to lose. You think about how she probably thinks the same thing. From somewhere beyond the horizon comes the thud of artillery. Slow, steady, almost lazy. It's not the frantic roar of battle anymore. It's the background noise of living. The men barely flinch. They've started to treat explosions like weather. One soldier near you, a boy with freckles and a missing button, is writing a letter. He's been writing the same one for 3 days. He folds it carefully, even though he has no envelope, and tucks it into his boot. You don't ask who it's for. He probably doesn't know anymore. Hitler, far away, is impatient. He expected victory weeks ago. He thought the Soviet Union would crumble like stale bread. Instead, it's proving more like a rock, ugly, immovable, and somehow growing stronger under pressure. His generals argue about logistics. He ignores them. Historians still debate whether he actually believed his own speeches or if he was simply addicted to the sound of certainty. Meanwhile, Stalin finally moves. He arrests a few generals, mostly the wrong ones, then orders the scorched earth policy. You hear about it from a rumor whispered by a passing officer. They're burning their own towns. Sounds insane until you see it. Entire villages on fire, barns lit like candles, fields turned to ash. It's not just destruction, it's strategy. The Soviets are denying the invaders everything. Food, shelter, hope. As you trudge through the smoke, you can't help but notice something strange. The soldiers start picking berries from the roadside. Grown men in gray uniforms, pockets full of blueberries. One even shares a handful with you. It's the closest thing to kindness you've seen in weeks. The war briefly tastes sweet. Your historical fact for this march. By August 1941, Germany had advanced over 600 kilometers into Soviet territory. Millions of Soviet troops were captured. Yet, the Soviet government didn't collapse. In fact, Stalin began moving entire factories east, thousands of them, piece by piece, rebuilding industry beyond the reach of German bombers. It was a logistical miracle built out of pure paranoia and fear. You wake before dawn. The air is cold enough to sting. A mist hangs low over the fields, turning the world into a watercolor. You can hear engines warming up in the distance, that low, mechanical purr of men getting ready to break things again. You stretch your legs, brush the dew from your coat, and start walking. The mud grips your boots like an old friend who doesn't want you to leave. Somewhere behind you, a sergeant shouts at no one in particular. Ahead, the road stretches toward Smolensk, the next prize in Hitler's unstoppable advance. You walk past the wreckage of what used to be a convoy. Burnt trucks, twisted metal, a lone boot half buried in mud. No one talks about it. The war eats its mistakes and moves on. You do too. You stop for a moment near a field where soldiers are boiling potatoes in a dented pot. The smell is comforting in a primitive way, warm, earthy, real. One of them offers you a piece. You nod your thanks, and he grins, revealing a missing tooth. For a few minutes, the world shrinks to this. Smoke, laughter, the faint promise of breakfast. Then someone mentions Moscow, and the laughter dies. You keep walking. The road is littered with abandoned helmets, ration tins, and the occasional playing card. Feels like the war is slowly shedding its skin. High above, German planes roar eastward. They look graceful, almost peaceful from here. You wonder how something so elegant can be designed for such ugliness. You think of the engineers who built them, precise, proud men who probably never saw the faces of the people their machines would bury. By late morning, the heat settles in. The men march slower, their faces slick with sweat. The fields are endless, the air buzzing with flies. You spot a wooden sign nailed to a post. Moscow, 400 kilometers. It feels impossibly close and infinitely far. Here's your major historical fact for today. The Battle of Smolensk, July to September 1941, marked the first real delay in Germany's eastward rush. The Soviets, outnumbered and outgunned, held the line just long enough to slow the blitzkrieg. It was a victory measured in days, but those days cost the Germans the one thing they couldn't afford to lose: time. You pass a wounded soldier sitting by the road, holding a broken rifle like a walking stick. His eyes are blank. He doesn't ask for help. You don't offer. You both understand that sympathy is a luxury here. An obscure tidbit: German troops began suffering from something called steppe madness, a kind of disorientation caused by endless horizons. Some soldiers swore they saw ghost villages that vanished when approached. Others reported hearing whispers in the wheat fields. No one wrote those reports officially, of course. Armies don't like ghosts in their paperwork. By afternoon, you reach the outskirts of a forest. It's cooler here, the air thick with pine and damp soil. You find a stream and kneel to drink. The water tastes clean, metallic, alive. For the first time in days, you feel human again. Somewhere deeper in the woods, someone is playing an accordion. It's out of tune, but heartfelt. The melody drifts through the trees like smoke. You follow it until you find a small camp. Soldiers huddled around a fire, trading songs from home. One hums something French, another murmurs a lullaby from Bavaria. You sit nearby, not speaking, just listening. It's strangely peaceful, this brief truce between exhaustion and music. Night falls quietly. The forest glows with the last embers of the fire. You think about Hitler, still obsessed with maps and arrows, drawing lines that cross rivers and lives. You think about Stalin, pacing in the Kremlin, pretending to be calm while ordering entire cities to stand their ground. Two men ruling over fear like children hoarding toys. If you listen carefully, you can hear history groaning, the sound of too many egos pulling in opposite directions. You sigh, feeling very small and very tired. Before you sleep, a final note drifts through your mind. You probably won't make it through this day. But that's all right. No one really does. You lie back against the cold earth. The stars flicker through the branches. Somewhere in the distance, artillery murmurs like distant thunder. You close your eyes and let it blend with your breath. Tomorrow will be worse. But for now, the forest is kind. Sleep, traveler. The story isn't done yet. You wake to a chorus of crows. They sound like they're laughing at you, which, in fairness, they probably are. You lie there for a moment, staring up through the canopy, watching thin fingers of sunlight filter through the pine needles. The air is cold, your blanket is damp, and someone nearby is snoring with the consistency of a broken accordion. You roll onto your side and feel the hard outline of your canteen pressing into your ribs. It's half full. You sip slowly, trying to make the water last, even though you know how ridiculous that is in a place where rivers seem to sprout from every ditch. But that's what war does to you, turns abundance into anxiety. By the time you start walking again, the road has disappeared. It's just mud and roots and the occasional track of wheels. A signpost leans drunkenly at a crossroads, its letters peeling. Vyazma. You don't know if you're heading toward it or away. At this point, even the compass feels confused. The men march quietly, their uniforms stiff with dust. Someone hums the first few notes of a folk tune, and another joins in. It's not exactly harmony, but it's human, and that counts for something. By midday, you reach an abandoned farmhouse. It's mostly intact, though the roof is missing half its shingles and the door hangs on one hinge. Inside, the smell of mildew and old bread. You find a single chair, a real chair with legs and everything, and you sit. Creaks but holds. Luxury. You spot something odd on the wall. A child's drawing, half faded, showing a red sun and two stick figures holding hands. Beneath it, someone has scrawled in Russian, "We'll come home when the snow does." You don't know if that means they ever did. Outside, the fields stretch endlessly. Golden wheat on one side, blackened stubble on the other. The line where life ends and ruin begins is sharp, almost artistic. You walk along it for a while, like a tightrope walker balancing between past and present. A convoy of tanks rumbles by, kicking up dust. Their steel hides glint in the sun, their crews shouting to one another through the roar. They look invincible and tired of pretending. One of them waves. You wave back. It's like acknowledging ghosts. That's your major historical fact for this section. By October 1941, Hitler's Operation Typhoon, the final push toward Moscow, had begun. The German army believed the Soviet Union was collapsing. They even printed invitations for a victory parade in Red Square. They just forgot one thing. Moscow in winter is not a parade ground. It's a frozen trap. But right now it's still autumn, and the world hasn't frozen yet. The trees are bright with dying color. The wind smells faintly of rain and apples. Somewhere, impossibly, life is still trying to happen. You stop at a small orchard. The fruit is small and sour, but you eat one anyway. The juice runs down your chin. A soldier nearby laughs and says, "You look like a child." You tell him it's the first good insult you've heard all week. Then you hear the planes. Not many, maybe 3, but enough to turn the laughter into silence. They swoop low, sunlight flashing off their wings. The bombs fall slow and soft, like pebbles tossed into a pond. The explosions, though, they're not soft. The world shakes. You throw yourself into a ditch, heart racing. When it's over, you lift your head and see smoke drifting across the orchard. Half the trees are gone. The apples lie scattered, bruised, steaming. You lie there for a long time, listening to the flies return. An obscure tidbit. Soviet civilians during the early war sometimes buried family photographs in glass jars before fleeing east. They believed the pictures would hold the soul of their home until they returned. Decades later, farmers still dig them up, faces staring out from another lifetime. As the day fades, you find a quiet spot by a ruined windmill. You sit and watch the sunset, a slow, red bleeding across the horizon. It looks like the sky is tired too. You think about Hitler in his bunker map room, eyes flicking across lines and circles, convinced he can control the weather with willpower. You think about Stalin, surrounded by generals too afraid to speak. 2 men locked in a contest of fear, each trying to outstare the other while the world burns beneath their gaze. You sigh. The crows return, louder now, as if mocking both of them. And you, too, for watching. Fine, you mutter. Laugh all you want. They do. You settle against the wall of the windmill, close your eyes, and let the distant rumble of artillery fade into the rhythm of your breathing. You probably won't make it through this night, but that's all right, you don't need to. The story will carry you for a while longer. The first snow falls like dust, soft, slow, patient, as if the sky has decided to forgive everything for a moment. You wake beneath a thin layer of white, brush it from your hair, and watch your breath fog the air. It's November 1941. The roads have turned to frozen rivers of mud. The tanks are choking on cold, and the soldiers have started wrapping newspapers around their legs for warmth. You walk through a landscape of half-buried trucks and abandoned boots. The silence is different now, heavier, like the air itself has stopped breathing. A soldier ahead of you slips on the ice and curses softly. His voice sounds too human for this place. You help him up. Neither of you says anything. Words feel too fragile to waste. The horizon is gray, the trees skeletal, and the village is nothing but shapes under snow. You pass one, just chimneys poking from drifts like gravestones. A dog trots by, fur-matted, eyes bright, pauses, looks at you, then disappears into the whiteness. Your fingers are numb. Your thoughts move slowly. Even time seems reluctant to continue. Somewhere, faintly, you hear a song, low, rhythmic, almost a chant. It's coming from a line of soldiers digging trenches. Their shovels rise and fall in unison, keeping the beat. You join them for a while, not because you have to, but because it feels wrong not to. The ground is hard as iron. The cold seeps through your boots, through your bones, into your very sense of self. This is where the German advance stalls, not in a battle, but in exhaustion. Here's your historical fact for the night. In December 1941, the German army came within 30 kilometers of Moscow. They could see the glow of the city's lights. Then the temperature dropped to minus 30 degrees Celsius. Engines froze. Guns jammed. Soldiers died standing up. The invincible army had reached its limit, and the Soviets, newly reinforced with Siberian troops, struck back. You stop by a wrecked tank half buried in snow. Someone has drawn a smiley face on its side in soot. It's faint, but it makes you grin. A joke surviving in the middle of catastrophe, humanity's favorite trick. An obscure tidbit. Some German officers reportedly ordered soldiers to urinate on their rifles to prevent the bolts from freezing shut. It worked, mostly. No one wrote songs about it. You find shelter in a small barn that night. The walls creak in the wind, and snow drifts in through the cracks. You light a tiny fire with the last of your matches. The flame flickers orange and small, but it feels like a sun. You warm your hands and think of home, not as a place but as an idea. You remember a loaf of bread, a radio playing faint jazz, someone laughing in the next room. Things that no longer exist but somehow still anchor you. Outside, the wind howls like something alive. It rattles the barn door and shakes the roof. You close your eyes, pretending it's just the sea. Somewhere far away, Hitler gives another speech. His voice is hoarse now, the confidence gone thin around the edges. He blames the cold, the mud, the generals, the gods, anything but himself. You imagine him staring at a snowflake on his sleeve, wondering how something so small could undo so much. You pull your coat tighter. The fire dies slowly. The snow keeps falling. Sleep comes like surrender, and that's fine. Let the world freeze. Let history argue. You've done enough walking for one night. Morning arrives without color. The sky is the same shade as the snow, and the snow is the same shade as the sky. If not for the crunch of your boots, you might think the world has forgotten to exist. You rub your hands together, trying to feel the shape of warmth, but all you get is the rough scrape of your gloves. The soldiers around you move like ghosts now, slow, hollow-eyed, the steam of their breath rising in soft plumes. Somewhere in the distance, you hear a truck trying to start. The engine wheezes, coughs, then gives up. The man behind the wheel swears in German, then hits the dashboard like he's punishing the war itself. You start walking again. The road leads through a forest where the trees lean inward, heavy with frost. Icicles hang like glass daggers from every branch. When the wind blows, they chime faintly, a brittle, crystalline music. It's beautiful in a cruel way. You pass a group of soldiers huddled around a dead horse. They're cutting strips from it, methodically, without expression. One offers you a piece. You shake your head. He shrugs and keeps sawing. The smell is indescribable. You try not to breathe. War, you realize, always strips things down to the simplest kind of truth. Hunger, cold, survival. The rest, pride, ideology, destiny, is just decoration. By midday, you reach the edge of a frozen river. The surface gleams like dull metal. A line of men is hauling supplies across it, their boots slipping, their curses muffled by scarves. Halfway across, a cart goes through. The ice cracks, groans, and then swallows it whole. No one screams. They just move faster. For a brief, impossible moment, you feel safe. Later, as you leave, she presses a small loaf of bread into your hands. You don't want to take it. She clearly has so little, but her expression says the argument is over before it begins. You bow slightly. She closes the door behind you without looking back. You walk through the snow until her house becomes just another shadow. The bread is still warm. You break it in half and eat slowly. It tastes of smoke and salt and quiet defiance. That night, as you lie beneath the stars, you think about all the small acts of kindness that manage to survive inside history's cruelty, and how they're never recorded in any report, but they're what keep the world from ending completely. The wind howls across the steppe, but you hear something softer beneath it, the sound of the samovar, still steaming somewhere far behind you. You smile. Then sleep takes you. You dream of trains. Long, dark trains that never stop. Their carriages filled with faces you can't quite see. The wheels clatter in rhythm with your heartbeat. When you wake, the sound doesn't stop. You open your eyes to a gray dawn and realize it's real. A train, chugging somewhere nearby. You walk toward the sound, boots crunching through the crusted snow. As you crest a small hill, you see it. A line of boxcars, motionless, half buried in frost. Men are unloading crates. Their breath clouds the air. You get closer and see the words stenciled on the sides. From the Urals. Supplies, weapons, food. The Soviet lifeline that Stalin's paranoia made possible. The factories that were dismantled and hauled east months ago are now saving Moscow's defenders. You can almost hear the bureaucratic smugness echoing across time. Your historical fact for today: between July 1941 and January 1942, the Soviet Union relocated over 1,500 industrial plants east of the Urals, including entire steelworks and aircraft factories. Trains carried not just machines, but workers, families, and even livestock. It was, in its own bleak way, the largest road trip in history. You watch as a woman climbs down from one of the boxcars. Her face is windburned, her coat several sizes too big. She carries a crate labeled precision parts. You wonder if she knows she's holding the future, that the planes built from those parts will eventually darken the skies above Berlin. Probably not. She's just tired. Nearby, a Soviet officer shouts at a group of men repairing a track. His voice is sharp, but his eyes look scared. You can tell he's trying to control chaos with volume, a trick common to generals and parents alike. You pass through the station, which is really just a shack with a stove and a broken sign. Inside, someone has tacked up a newspaper clipping. Moscow stands firm. The ink is smudged, but the words feel almost defiant. An obscure tidbit: during the darkest days of 1941, Soviet radio stations sometimes played the ticking of a metronome between broadcasts. It was a simple message: we are still here. No speeches, no propaganda, just time still passing. You keep walking along the tracks. The rails stretch east and west, glinting faintly under the snow, like veins of iron running through a frozen body. You imagine the continent itself as a sleeping giant, half dead but not defeated. By noon, the snow begins again. Fine flakes drift down, soft and slow. The wind picks up. Visibility fades. The soldiers ahead vanish into a blur of white. You stop walking, realizing there's no real direction anymore. Just movement for the sake of not freezing. You find shelter under a derailed train car. It smells of rust and cold iron. You light a small candle and watch the flame wobble in the draft. For a moment, it looks like the whole world is breathing with you. You pull out what's left of the bread from last night. It's hard now, but you chew slowly, thinking of the woman who gave it to you. How her shawl smelled faintly of smoke and soap. You wonder if she's still alive. Outside, the snow deepens. You can't see the sky anymore, only endless gray. Somewhere, you think you hear singing again. Faint, distant, maybe imagined. A Russian folk melody, slow and circular, like a lullaby sung to the storm itself. You close your eyes and let the sound fill the emptiness. Somewhere far away, Hitler orders no retreat. Somewhere else, Stalin orders not one step back. Two men shouting into the same void. You sit beneath the derailed train, between their echoes, and think, maybe history isn't about who wins. It's about who freezes slower. The candle burns lower. The wind howls. The snow falls. You feel your heartbeat slow, steady, stubborn. You think, maybe the ravens will remember this story. Then you smile, just a small, tired curve of your mouth, and drift into sleep again. When you wake, it's still snowing, or maybe it started again. Hard to tell anymore. The sky looks like wet paper, heavy and gray. You stretch your arms, joints cracking like old wood. The candle has burned down to a puddle of wax beside you. You brush snow off your coat and climb out from under the derailed train. The world greets you with silence. You start walking. You don't know where the front is anymore. It might have moved while you were sleeping. That's the problem with wars, they never stay still long enough to make sense of them. The trees are white ghosts, their branches weighed down with ice. Somewhere ahead, a crow caws once, sharp and echoing. You grin. You remember the one that followed you before. Maybe it's the same one. Maybe it's just the same idea of one. You reach a half-collapsed bridge around midday. Below, a river struggles under a layer of slush and thin ice. The current looks lazy but hides power beneath. You stand there for a while, watching chunks of snow drift by. You think, this river doesn't care who wins. On the far bank, smoke rises from chimneys. A small town, maybe 20 buildings at most. You start toward it, boots crunching over the frozen mud. Halfway across, you meet a group of retreating soldiers. Their faces are red from cold, eyes hollow, beards stiff with frost. One of them stops and asks where you're going. You tell him forward, though the word feels meaningless now. He laughs without sound. Forward, he says. There's nothing forward but more cold. You keep walking anyway. When you reach the edge of town, you find signs of life. Faint, fragile. Smoke curls from a chimney. A goat bleats somewhere. A few children stand near a broken cart, staring at you with that blunt, wordless curiosity children have when the world is too strange to explain. You nod. One waves. The others run. A woman emerges from a doorway, shawl wrapped tight, face weathered but kind. She says something you can't understand, gestures toward the door. You follow her inside. It's warm. The air smells of cabbage soup and wood smoke. A stove glows faintly in the corner. She motions for you to sit. You do. She ladles soup into a tin bowl and places it in your hands. The steam fogs your face. You take a bite. It's thin, salty, but hot, and therefore perfect. You thank her. She nods. Neither of you speaks again for a long time. Outside, the wind moans like a restless ghost. The woman looks toward the window, sighs, and mutters something that sounds like a prayer. You imagine she's lost someone, probably more than one. Everyone has by now. After you eat, she shows you to a corner bed piled with wool blankets. You sink into it. The warmth feels unreal. Before you drift off, you hear her humming softly. A lullaby, or maybe just something to fill the silence. Your historical fact for this stretch of the road. By early 1942, the German advance on Moscow had officially failed. Operation Typhoon was over. The Soviet counteroffensive began, pushing the exhausted Wehrmacht back dozens of kilometers. For the first time, Hitler tasted retreat. He didn't like it. An obscure tidbit. During that winter, Soviet ski battalions, yes, actual ski troops, became a crucial part of the fighting. Soldiers would glide silently through forests, rifles slung over their backs, appearing and vanishing like phantoms. Germans called them snow devils. You dream that night of sliding silently across the snow yourself, the cold wind stinging your cheeks, the stars close enough to touch. It's peaceful, almost absurdly so, until you wake to shouting outside. You leap up, stumble to the window. The horizon burns orange. Someone's shouting, "Tanks!" The war, it seems, has found this quiet place again. You grab your pack and step into the cold. The woman is gone. The children too. Smoke rises from the other end of the village. You run. You don't know why. Maybe habit. Maybe hope. When you reach the main road, you see the tanks, not many, but enough to end the silence. You duck behind a wagon and wait. The engines rumble closer, then fade. The snow begins to fall again, thick and slow, as if trying to smother the noise. You realize, not for the first time, that history always finds you, even when you try to sleep through it. You lie there, breathing frost, and let the snow cover you until the world goes white again. When you wake, everything is white and quiet, too quiet. You push yourself up and brush snow from your shoulders. The village is gone. Not burned, not leveled, just gone under the snow. Only the tops of roofs and chimneys remain like gravestones. The tanks are gone too. Only their tracks remain, winding east like the scars of some enormous animal. You follow them out of habit. Your breath fogs the air in small, rhythmic bursts. Sounds like a train far away. The sky is still gray, though lighter now, the kind of gray that promises nothing but daylight. Hours pass. You lose count. You stop noticing the cold, which probably isn't a good sign. Then, finally, you see something on the horizon. A column of smoke, thicker than before. You walk faster. When you reach it, you find a Soviet field camp. Tents half buried in snow, men wrapped in fur coats, fires crackling. They barely glance at you. One gestures toward a pile of logs, muttering something that probably means, "Make yourself useful." You do. You sit by the fire later, rubbing your hands together, watching sparks rise into the sky. The men speak in low tones, sharing bits of bread and cigarettes. Their faces are hard but alive. You realize how rare that's becoming. Your historical fact tonight. The Soviet winter counteroffensive of 1941 to 42 pushed the German army back from Moscow by nearly 200 kilometers. It was the first major defeat for Hitler's forces, proof that the invincible Reich could bleed. It didn't end the war, but it cracked the myth. You watch a young soldier carving something into a piece of wood. When he finishes, he holds it up, a small, rough carving of a bear on skis. He laughs, hands it to you, and says one word in broken German, "Comrade." You nod. You keep the bear. An obscure tidbit. Some Soviet officers encouraged troops to keep small charms, carved animals, bits of ribbon, or coins, believing they brought luck in battle. It wasn't official doctrine, of course, but Stalin didn't argue with superstition when it worked. That night, a storm hits. The tents shake, the fires die, and the cold creeps back in with a vengeance. You curl up in your coat, the wooden bear pressed against your chest, and try to sleep through the sound of wind tearing at the canvas. You think of Hitler, pacing in his headquarters, pretending the weather can be reasoned with. You think of Stalin, reading reports through the night, drinking endless tea while entire divisions freeze in his name. You think of the world itself, ancient and indifferent, watching both men like an old teacher watching two particularly foolish students argue over who owns the chalkboard. The storm lasts until dawn. When it finally breaks, the world feels new again, wiped clean, pale, and strangely peaceful. The soldiers emerge one by one, faces red from cold, laughter cracking through the air like sunlight through frost. You look east and see the faint glow of sunrise. The war isn't over, not even close, but for the first time it feels like one side just maybe will survive. You exhale long and slow, watching the steam drift upward. "Still here," you whisper. The raven overhead croaks once like an answer. You smile and keep walking. You walk east for days, or what feels like days. The sky stays a pale, tired gray, as if the sun has grown bored of shining. Your boots crunch rhythmically against the snow, a sound you've come to trust more than your own heartbeat. There's a rhythm to war when you stop fighting it. Walk, eat, shiver, sleep. Repeat until someone changes the map. You pass what used to be a village. Burnt walls, roofless barns, an overturned cart frozen mid-fall. Like someone pressed pause on destruction. You stop to look at a half-buried signpost, its letters almost unreadable. You trace them with your gloved hand. Vyazma. You've heard that name before. Whispered in mess tents, scribbled on old maps, cursed under frozen breath. In October 1941, entire Soviet armies were surrounded here. Hundreds of thousands captured. Hitler had called it proof of German superiority. Stalin had called it, well, he didn't call it anything. He just stopped mentioning it. Now the snow has covered it all. You kick at a frozen helmet, watch it roll a little, then stop. Somewhere beneath the ice lies history. Silent, unrecorded, forgotten. You find shelter in a collapsed barn that night. The air inside smells faintly of hay and gun oil. You light a candle stub and stare at its tiny flame. You think, how strange that something so small can keep back the dark. You nibble on hard bread from a soldier's ration tin. It tastes of sawdust and resolve. Outside, the wind moans across the fields, carrying distant echoes. Gunfire, maybe, or just the sound of the earth remembering. A new day comes with no fanfare. You wake stiff, throat dry, fingers numb. You keep moving. A group of Soviet engineers is repairing a bridge over a half-frozen stream. One waves you over. You help for a while, handing them nails and planks, not saying much. When the bridge finally stands again, one of them grins, hands you a small flask and says, "For strength." You drink. It burns beautifully. Your historical fact for this stretch. After the German failure outside Moscow, Stalin ordered a series of relentless winter offensives in early 1942. Too ambitious, too costly. Soviet forces advanced in some areas but were mauled in others. The Red Army gained pride but lost men faster than spring could melt their graves. An obscure tidbit. Some frontline Soviet troops carried small tins of condensed milk not for nutrition, but as currency. In the chaos of war, a single can could buy food, shelter, or even silence. Soldiers joked that milk is better than metals. You pass a frozen field full of abandoned vehicles. Tanks half buried, their metal twisted like old bones. A crow lands on one and stares at you. You wave. It doesn't leave. There's something comforting about that. Night falls again. You lie under the stars, your coat pulled tight, the carved wooden bear tucked near your chest. The stars blur slightly from the mist of your breath. You think of warmth as a kind of prayer. And before sleep takes you, you mutter, half to yourself, half to the stars. You probably won't make it through this day, but you do. Somehow you always do. You wake to sunlight, real sunlight. It spills over the snow like honey, golden and thick. You blink at it, half convinced it's a dream. You walk toward the warmth, slow and unhurried. The sky is painfully blue. For a moment, the war feels like it's paused, or maybe it's just far away today. You reach a railway track cutting through the snow, the metal rails gleaming in the light. A train appears in the distance, moving with a kind of exhausted determination. It's a supply train Soviet by the red star on its side. You wave as it passes. A few soldiers lean out, shouting greetings. One throws you something, a small loaf of bread wrapped in newspaper. You catch it, wave back, laugh. You sit on the rail and unwrap it carefully. The bread is warm, somehow. You tear a piece off and eat. Tastes like peace. The newspaper around it carries headlines. Stalingrad holds. New factories in the Urals. The motherland advances. You smile at the optimism. It's almost charming in its denial. Your historical fact for this moment. In the spring of 1942, the German army began planning Operation Blue, the drive toward the oil fields of the Caucasus and the city of Stalingrad. Hitler believed that if he could seize Soviet oil, he could strangle the Red Army's engines. It was a brilliant plan in theory and a catastrophic one in practice. You imagine him now, pacing a map-strewn table somewhere far away, his eyes wild, his finger jabbing at lines on a map as if shouting could make geography obey. An obscure tidbit. Hitler's personal astrologer, yes, he had won, warned him in 1942 that Mars is moving against you. Hitler ignored it, declaring that the stars favor the bold. History would later note that the stars apparently favored irony instead. The wind shifts. You catch the scent of smoke again. Distant, thin, but enough to remind you that peace is still temporary here. You start walking toward it. By evening, you reach a field hospital. Rows of tents stretch into the snow, smoke curling from makeshift chimneys. The moans of the wounded hang in the air like low music. A nurse waves you over, mistaking you for a courier. You nod and help carry supplies inside. The tent is warm and smells of alcohol and boiled linen. You move between cots, faces pale, hands trembling, eyes unfocused. One young man grips your sleeve, whispers something about home, and falls silent. You stand there for a while, hands still on his, until the nurse gently takes over. You step outside. The cold hits like truth. You stand there breathing, watching the snow fall over the tents. You realize that victory, for most people, is just surviving the night. You look up at the sky, soft blue fading into silver, and think of how small humans are against all that space. How brief, how stubborn. Somewhere out there, two men, Hitler and Stalin, are both convinced the other will blink first. You smile to yourself. Good luck, you murmur to the sky. Then, almost gently, you add, Now let's ease into tonight's journey, and you keep walking deeper into the quiet that never seems to last. You wake with your back pressed against the frozen earth, a thin layer of frost glittering on your coat. The air is sharp, almost delicious in its coldness, and your breath comes out in little clouds that vanish too quickly. The world is silent except for the distant thrum of artillery, like a lullaby for the unwilling. You rise slowly, feeling each joint protest in turn. The snow around you crunches softly underfoot as you start walking again. Today, the road seems longer, endless even, stretching eastward into a haze of frost and pine. The landscape is simple, white, gray, and black, but beautiful in that stark, brutal way that only survival can teach you to notice. You pass an abandoned farmhouse, roof caved in, walls leaning at impossible angles. Inside, you find a table still set with plates and utensils, frozen remnants of a life interrupted. One plate has a smear of something brown on it. You can't tell what it was, and maybe it's better that way. You think of the family that lived here and hope they made it farther east. By midday, the sun has climbed higher but offers little warmth. You trudge through a field of frozen stubble, the snow shallow but biting. A single crow perches on a fence post, observing you with the patience of someone who has seen too many fools march by. You wave, cause, unimpressed. You come across a small encampment of Soviet scouts. They are huddled around a tiny fire, their rifles leaning against trees like obedient dogs. One of them notices you and motions to join. You sit, letting the warmth seep into your fingers and toes. One hands you a small piece of black bread. It's dense, bitter, but better than nothing. Your historical fact: during the winter of 1941 to 42, Soviet ski troops played a pivotal role in reconnaissance and harassment operations, moving silently across snowfields to report German positions. Their knowledge of terrain and weather often gave them the advantage against the larger, less flexible Wehrmacht forces. An obscure tidbit: some of these scouts carried small mechanical toys in their packs, trinkets to amuse children when towns were liberated, or perhaps just to remind themselves of childhood. War doesn't always erase whimsy. You share the fire with them for a short while, listening to the rhythmic scraping of snowshoes against ice. They speak little, but their eyes hold stories of families lost, of homes abandoned, of cold nights survived. You nod at the ones you understand and remain silent for the rest. By late afternoon, you continue along a frozen road leading to Vyazma. The landscape is dotted with wreckage, abandoned tanks, burned-out trucks, scattered helmets. Each one tells a story you don't want to know in detail. As night falls, you find a ruined barn and take shelter. Inside, it smells of hay and rot, but it's better than the open snow. You light a small candle, and the flame dances across the wooden walls, casting long, soft shadows. You watch it, entranced, as if it were a living thing. You remember the carved wooden bear in your pack. You take it out, turning it over in your hands. It's small, almost fragile, but it has survived everything so far. A symbol of resilience, maybe, or just a piece of wood, but right now you need it to be more. You lie down, staring at the flickering light, feeling the cold seep in despite the blanket. Somewhere outside, the wind moans against the barn. It sounds like a conversation between ghosts. You close your eyes and imagine the warmth of the sun on your face. The world is still cruel, and the war is far from over. But for tonight, there is light and bread and a small bear. You let your thoughts drift. Sleep comes slowly, like a reluctant river. Morning arrives with muted light. You rise, stretching, feeling the stiffness in your back and legs. The snow is deep now, powdery and unbroken except for your tracks. You start walking along the main road toward Smolensk. The forest is quiet, save for the occasional crack of a branch underfoot. You pass another destroyed village. Smoke rises from a few smoldering chimneys. The wind carries the smell of burned wood and something faintly metallic. You imagine the people who once lived here and hope they found shelter elsewhere. The soldiers marching with you move slowly, burdened by exhaustion and frostbite. One of them hums a tune, barely audible over the crunch of snow. It's a Russian folk song, circular and soft. You hum along quietly, the melody unfamiliar but comforting. By midday, you reach a frozen river. A few engineers are at work, cutting ice and setting logs to form a temporary bridge. You offer to help, hauling planks and stones, the labor grounding you in the simple act of survival. Your historical fact: the German advance toward Smolensk in mid-1941 had created one of the largest encirclements in military history, capturing hundreds of thousands of Soviet troops. Yet, pockets of resistance remained, buying precious time for Stalin to relocate industry and reinforce defenses further east. An obscure tidbit: German soldiers reported hearing what they called the ghost trains. Freight trains that seemed to appear from nowhere at night, moving supplies eastward, often disappearing before they could be intercepted. The stories were dismissed by some as legend, but others swore they saw the trains themselves. By late afternoon, you reach a grove of trees. The sun dips low, casting long shadows that stretch across the snow. You stop, watching as a lone wolf crosses the path in front of you, its coat gray and white against the frost. It pauses, eyes catching yours for a brief moment, then melts into the forest. The men around you set up a temporary camp. Fires are lit, and small meals are prepared from what little rations remain. You sit near one, warming your hands, listening to the quiet conversations. Each man speaks sparingly, conserving energy and words alike. As night falls, the cold deepens. The wind moans across the plain, bending the trees and rattling the tents. You wrap yourself in blankets, clutching the wooden bear close. It's a strange comfort, a small anchor in a vast, indifferent world. You reflect on Hitler, somewhere in the east, frustrated and furious at stalled advances. You reflect on Stalin, seated in warmth, watching reports arrive of men freezing, starving, and dying, and planning how to use it all to his advantage. Two leaders, both consumed by fear and ambition, shaping a continent from afar. And here you are, small, walking through the snow, witnessing history not in grand speeches or maps, but in frozen villages, tired soldiers, and the persistent rhythm of human survival. You take a deep breath, letting the cold air fill your lungs. The stars begin to appear, faint but steady. The wind carries the faintest hint of smoke from distant fires. You lie back on the snow, letting your body sink into the cold comfort of the earth. The wooden bear rests against your chest, and you imagine the wolf somewhere nearby, silent and patient, waiting for dawn. You let your eyes close, letting the snow fall over you, soft and slow, as if the world itself is sighing. And for a while, just for a moment, everything feels still. You wake to the faint pink of dawn spilling across the snowy plains. The cold bites at your face, but the light, delicate, hesitant, offers a kind of quiet reassurance. You stretch, feeling the stiffness in your limbs, and start moving again. The snow underfoot is soft, powdery, resisting your weight in gentle, muffled crunches. The road ahead is vague, almost lost under the endless white. Trees line the horizon like guards, their branches heavy with frost. A crow croaks from somewhere high above, then dips back into the forest. You wave. It doesn't respond. The soldiers with you shuffle onward, bundled in layers of cloth and despair. One has frostbite spreading over his fingers. Another coughs without pause. You pass, offering silent encouragement. Words are wasted here. Survival is the only language that matters. By mid-morning, you arrive at the outskirts of a town. Buildings mostly intact, though doors hang on broken hinges, windows gaping like empty eyes. A stove in one corner still smokes faintly. Someone has left a note. We fled east. Keep the bread for yourself. You smile faintly. Civilians still leave gestures of kindness amidst chaos. Your historical fact. In the harsh winter of 1941–42, Soviet defenses around Moscow relied heavily on hastily constructed fortifications, ski troops, and local militia. Civilians contributed wherever possible, digging trenches, building barricades, and transporting supplies through snow that could swallow a manhole. The city itself survived not just through strategy but through sheer human endurance. An obscure tidbit. Some Soviet soldiers would carry small bottles of vodka or homemade spirits not for drinking, but as antiseptic or to warm their frozen extremities. Warcraft meets kitchencraft, you think. You move toward a ruined bakery. Inside, sacks of half-frozen flour remain. You scoop a handful, tasting it dry. It's gritty, faintly sweet, a reminder of what humans endure for the most basic comforts. You think of bread as a kind of prayer, rising slowly, resisting collapse even in the most impossible conditions. By afternoon, you find a small farmhouse, walls scorched, roof half gone. Inside, a family of 4 huddles together, wrapped in blankets. They glance up at you, not with fear but caution. You nod, offering a small piece of your bread. The father accepts it without words, passing it to his children. You sit nearby, watching the smoke curl from the broken chimney. Life persists stubbornly here. Outside, the wind carries a faint melody, a child humming something circular and sad. You remember that the smallest acts of beauty often survive in the least likely places. By evening, you settle near a shallow creek, snow soft around you. The moon reflects off the ice in pale silver, creating shapes that resemble tiny cities. You pull the carved wooden bear from your pack and place it beside you. It has become a companion, a silent observer of your journey. You think of Hitler again, pacing in the warmth, furious that his eastern offensive has stalled. Stalin, in contrast, observes, calculates, and waits, a man who understands the patience of winter. Both men driven by fear, yet neither entirely in control of the land or the people trudging through its snow. The stars appear, one by one, sharp and indifferent. You lie back, letting the snow cradle you. Your mind drifts to quiet images. The crow returning, the wolf crossing fields, the small family inside their shattered farmhouse. You breathe slowly, deeply, letting your body remember warmth in the midst of cold. Sleep comes like a gentle surrender, soft as snow drifting onto frozen ground. Morning comes faintly, filtered through a thin curtain of clouds. You rise, brushing snow from your coat and adjusting the strap of your pack. The soldiers beside you start moving again. Slow, careful, like animals aware of every snap of ice beneath their feet. You follow a barely visible trail through a forest, the branches creaking under their icy burdens. A raven swoops overhead, and for a fleeting moment you think it's guiding you. Perhaps it is, perhaps it isn't. Either way, you follow. By mid-morning, you come across a field of abandoned German equipment. Tanks half-buried, rifles protruding from snow, helmets scattered like lost teeth. You kick at one, listening to the hollow sound echo. The silence is louder than the guns ever were. Historical fact. Following the winter counteroffensive of 1941 to 42, German forces suffered catastrophic logistical failures. Supplies frozen in rail cars, vehicles immobilized by snow and mud, and soldiers unprepared for the severe Russian winter forced Hitler to halt his advance. This was the first major turning point on the Eastern Front. An obscure tidbit: German soldiers would sometimes stuff their boots with hay or straw for warmth, creating the earliest version of winter hiking hacks. Not all survived, but some ingenuity counted. You trudge onward, eventually finding a small village half buried in snow. Only the chimneys of huts rise like fingers pointing at the sky. You hear laughter, faint but unmistakable, and follow it to a small cluster of children playing near a frozen pond. They slide on ice with sticks for skates, oblivious to the war around them. You pause, watching, allowing a rare smile. Evening finds you near a frozen lake. You build a small fire, letting the smoke rise in delicate swirls. The wooden bear rests beside you, its small form reminding you that resilience can be found in unexpected places. You think of Hitler pacing in his headquarters, increasingly paranoid, blaming generals, the weather, even fate itself. Stalin observes from afar, calculating, waiting, his patience as frozen and unyielding as the landscape. Two men, two visions, both powerless against the relentless advance of snow and time. You lie down, letting the cold seep into your bones, the fire flickering like a heartbeat. Somewhere distant, a train clatters along frozen tracks, carrying men, machines, and stories that may never be told. The stars emerge slowly, one by one, indifferent and eternal. You breathe deeply, allowing the rhythm of the world to settle around you. And for the first time in days, the war feels less like a force pressing on you and more like a backdrop. Distant, ongoing, almost a story you can watch from afar while the snow drifts and the world continues its patient, inexorable pulse. Sleep finds you once more, gentle, heavy, inevitable. You wake slowly, the frost on your eyelashes glinting like tiny crystals in the pale light of dawn. The air smells sharp, cold, pine, and something faintly metallic. You pull your coat tighter and begin walking again, the snow muffling every footstep. The world feels distant, as though it's holding its breath. The soldiers moving alongside you are quiet. The occasional cough breaks the silence, a soft punctuation in the rhythm of trudging boots. You notice how their faces are carved by cold and fatigue, but they still carry themselves with a stubborn dignity. Survival, after all, has a quiet pride of its own. By mid-morning, you reach a small hill. From the top, you can see the smoke of a distant village curling into the gray sky. You squint, wondering whether anyone remains inside. You've learned by now that sometimes the snow buries more than just bodies. It buries hope, memory, even the traces of life that tried to exist quietly. You descend the hill slowly, careful not to slip on ice hidden beneath the snow. A fox darts across your path, its coat blending with the gray and white landscape. You pause, watching it vanish into the trees, marveling at its grace. Your historical fact: in January 1942, the Soviet counteroffensive not only pushed German forces away from Moscow but also marked the beginning of a grueling war of attrition on the Eastern Front. Harsh winters, logistical failures, and resilient local populations would increasingly sap the Wehrmacht's strength. An obscure tidbit: Soviet troops sometimes used hollowed-out logs to transport messages silently across the battlefield, creating a primitive but effective postal system under extreme conditions. The Germans often walked past these without noticing, thinking them nothing more than debris. By afternoon, you find a ruined farmhouse. Inside, frost has etched intricate patterns on the window panes. You rest for a while, pulling out the wooden bear from your pack and placing it on the windowsill. It looks out at the world with a quiet, enduring presence. A small group of Soviet engineers passes by, hauling timber for repairs to a nearby bridge. They wave and you wave back. One of them tips an imaginary hat. Small gestures like these become remarkable when the world is cold, dangerous, and silent. As night falls, the wind rises, rattling the skeletal trees. You set up a small campfire in the snow, letting its warmth seep into your boots and coat. The glow flickers on the frozen earth, casting elongated shadows that dance like ghosts. You watch them, letting your mind drift between memory and observation. Hitler, somewhere far away, fumes over reports of stalled advances. Stalin, distant but present in his careful planning, notes positions, writes orders, and waits. Two men, both trying to impose control, both misjudging the resilience of the winter and the land itself. You lie back on your blanket of snow, the carved bear next to your chest. The stars begin to prick the sky, indifferent, eternal. You breathe slowly, letting your heartbeat sync with the soft rhythm of a world still moving despite everything. And slowly, inevitability edges you into sleep, soft and patient as falling snow. Morning arrives with a faint golden haze, sunlight filtering weakly through low clouds. You rise from your makeshift bed of snow and fabric scraps, brushing frost from your hair and shoulders. The landscape stretches before you, white, infinite, quiet. You begin walking along a barely visible trail. The soldiers around you move with the steady rhythm of survival, eyes half-lidded, boots trudging, bodies bent against the cold. A thin plume of smoke curls from a distant chimney, promising warmth, food, perhaps a brief respite. You reach a frozen stream. Ice covers its surface, but the current moves beneath like a silent threat. You test the edge with your boot. It holds. You cross, boots slipping, balance precarious, feeling the sharp bite of cold through your soles. Your historical fact: by February 1942, the German army was suffering severe shortages of ammunition, food, and medical supplies due to extended supply lines and the brutal Russian winter. Morale plummeted, and desertion and illness increased, further weakening their advance. An obscure tidbit: Soviet soldiers sometimes kept small dolls or trinkets in their pockets for luck, believing they could protect them from frostbite or bullets. Superstition and hope often walked hand in hand on the Eastern Front. You continue through a forest, skeletal trees bowing under snow. A raven follows at a distance, hopping from branch to branch, never getting closer but never leaving. You speak to it quietly, half joking, half serious. You're the only one who understands the pace of this war. By late afternoon, you come across a small village, mostly intact, smoke curling from chimneys. Children play in the snow, unaware of the destruction that surrounds them. Women carry water from a well, bundled in scarves and shawls. The scene is fragile, fleeting, yet profoundly alive. You sit near a fire outside a house, sharing the warmth with a weary soldier. He offers you a piece of black bread. You eat slowly, savoring the taste of survival. Night falls. The wind howls across the plains, rattling roofs and shaking the skeletal trees. You wrap yourself tightly in your coat and blanket, the carved wooden bear pressed against your chest. You close your eyes and listen. The soft crackle of fire, the distant laughter of children, the moan of the wind. Somewhere, Hitler rages in his headquarters, blaming generals, supplies, and the weather for failures he could not control. Stalin calmly notes positions, calculates risks, and waits. Two men, both desperate, both powerless against the relentless winter and resilient people. You exhale slowly, letting the cold seep into your lungs and then release, your body a rhythm with the world. Sleep comes, gentle and inevitable, carrying you into a quiet that feels almost sacred. The snow drifts around you, soft and unending, as if the world itself is sighing. You wake to a world that feels impossibly still. Snow blankets every surface, turning forests and fields into a seamless sheet of white. The wind is softer today, sighing gently rather than biting sharply. You stretch your stiff limbs, feeling the cold pulse in every joint, and start walking along a faint trail that winds between frozen pines. The soldiers moving beside you are quieter than usual. Their eyes are heavy, but their steps steady. You notice the way they conserve energy, shifting weight from one foot to the other, hands tucked into pockets or gloves, lips pressed together against the chill. Survival has become a precise dance, measured in heartbeats and frostbite warnings. By late morning, you arrive at a small clearing. The remnants of a village lie scattered. Walls collapsed, roofs caved in, barns frozen in partial ruin. A lone goat wanders through the debris, bleating softly. You follow its movement, curious, and find a frozen well nearby. Water is iced over, but you know there's liquid beneath. Life continues in stubborn ways. Historical fact: the winter of 1941–42 was catastrophic for the Wehrmacht. German troops, unprepared for the Russian winter, lost tens of thousands to frostbite, starvation, and disease. The harsh conditions effectively halted Hitler's Eastern campaign, proving that nature could be as formidable an enemy as any army. An obscure tidbit: some Soviet soldiers placed small talismans or icons in their boots to ward off the cold. Superstition and practicality intertwined in strange ways, each attempting to outwit the relentless frost. You move onward, eventually encountering a group of Soviet engineers repairing a half-collapsed bridge. They wave, and you join them, helping lift planks and hammer stakes into frozen ground. The work is repetitive and exhausting, but necessary. The bridge will carry supplies, soldiers, and hope alike. By afternoon, you reach a small river. The ice is thin in places, cracking under the weight of your boots. You test each step, careful not to fall. The river reflects the pale sun above, turning a dull silver. You pause for a moment, watching the slow movement beneath the ice, and feel the world's patience, its quiet endurance. As night falls, you find a ruined barn to shelter in. Inside, the air smells faintly of hay and frost. You light a candle, letting its glow dance across the walls. You pull the carved wooden bear from your pack and place it beside you. Its small presence offers a strange comfort, a reminder that some things endure even when the world around them is collapsing. You think of Hitler, pacing his headquarters in frustration. You think of Stalin, watching reports arrive in stacks of paper, each detailing frozen men, stalled tanks, and stubborn resistance. Both are powerful but powerless in different ways, one to winter, the other to uncertainty. You lie back on your bed of hay and blankets, feeling your body finally relax. The wind outside moans softly, a lullaby in white and gray. You close your eyes, letting sleep wash over you like the snow outside, relentless and gentle all at once. Dawn arrives faint and fragile, light spilling softly over the frozen landscape. You rise, brushing frost from your coat and boots, and begin walking once more. The snow stretches endlessly in all directions, muffling sound, flattening the world into shades of white and gray. The soldiers around you move like shadows, silent, steady, bodies bent under the weight of winter and war. Each step is deliberate, conserving strength, avoiding frozen patches that could break bones or morale. You notice the rhythm of their movement, slow, methodical, almost hypnotic. You pass a frozen field dotted with abandoned German vehicles. Tanks half buried in snow, rifles sticking out like tombstones, helmets scattered in uneven rows. The sight is grim yet mesmerizing. You trace a boot print through the frost and follow it, curiosity carrying you forward. Historical fact. The failure of the German advance toward Moscow forced Hitler to overextend his supply lines. Combined with brutal winter conditions and resilient Soviet resistance, this miscalculation marked a pivotal turning point on the Eastern Front, giving the Red Army time to regroup and fortify. An obscure tidbit: Soviet troops would sometimes tie small bells to their skis or boots when scouting at night, creating a faint jingling that confused German patrols and masked their true movements. A subtle trick in a vast, frozen chessboard of war. By late morning, you reach a frozen river. The ice groans under the weight of crossing soldiers and equipment. You test each step, careful not to fall. The river reflects the pale sky, a long ribbon of silver stretching to the horizon. You find a temporary camp near a ruined farmhouse. A small fire burns, crackling softly. You sit close, warming your hands, and break out a piece of bread from your pack. Its warmth and texture offer a small, fragile comfort. You think of Hitler, growing increasingly impatient and furious at reports of stalled advances. Stalin, in contrast, observes with calculated patience, orchestrating supply lines and troop movements, seemingly unaffected by the chaos. Both men are driven by fear, ambition, and stubbornness, yet neither controls the land or the snow. Evening comes, and the wind picks up, rattling the skeletal trees and frozen rooftops. You wrap yourself tightly in blankets, placing the carved wooden bear beside you. The stars emerge slowly, indifferent and eternal. You breathe slowly, allowing your heartbeat to sync with the quiet rhythm of the world. Somewhere far away, the war rages on. Yet here, in this fragile, fleeting corner of snow and firelight, there is warmth, survival, and quiet reflection. Sleep comes gently, soft as the snow drifting outside, carrying you through another night in a world that continues, relentless and patient. You wake to an almost imperceptible shift in the air, sunlight struggling to pierce the gray, turning the snow into a muted silver. The frost clings stubbornly to your eyelashes and coat. You rise carefully, muscles stiff, boots crunching through the fresh, powdery snow, and begin walking once again. The soldiers around you are quieter than usual, their faces drawn with exhaustion, yet a stubborn determination keeps them moving forward. Survival has become a slow, deliberate rhythm. Step, breathe, conserve energy, repeat. Even in the midst of war, there is a strange, hypnotic elegance in this routine. By mid-morning, you reach a small forest grove. Branches hang low under the weight of frost, sparkling in the pale sunlight. You notice a rabbit frozen mid-hop, caught in the snow, an accidental sculpture of the harsh winter. You kneel and let it go with a gentle nudge. Survival isn't just about humans. Sometimes it's about small acts of mercy. Historical fact: after the Soviet counteroffensive pushed back German forces near Moscow, the Red Army began establishing defensive positions deeper east, using natural landscapes like forests, rivers, and hills to their advantage. These positions, while rudimentary, leveraged terrain to slow the Germans' momentum. An obscure tidbit: Soviet soldiers sometimes carried small compasses painted with miniature motivational slogans, phrases like, "Forward," or "Winter won't last forever." It was a tiny act of hope, a compass not just for direction but for morale. By afternoon, you reach the outskirts of another village. Most buildings are intact, though signs of hurried evacuation are everywhere. Overturned carts, scattered belongings, and the occasional footprint leading east. You pause, considering the families that once lived here, imagining their fear and hope. A lone soldier approaches you, holding a small tin of condensed milk. He gestures for you to share. You take it, tasting the thick sweetness and letting it linger on your tongue. Simple pleasures feel monumental in this frozen world. As night approaches, you find a small barn to shelter in. Inside, the air smells faintly of hay and smoke, comforting and grounding. You light a candle stub and watch its flame dance across the walls, a tiny beacon against the darkness. The carved wooden bear sits beside you, a silent companion in a world otherwise dominated by survival. You think of Hitler, pacing in frustration, raging at stalled advances and winter's cruelty. Stalin, by contrast, observes with icy patience, orchestrating his forces with calculated precision. Two men, both powerful, both desperate, both playing a game in which nature and human resilience often decide the outcome. The wind rises outside, carrying the distant howl of wolves. You lie back, letting the cold seep into your bones, and close your eyes. Sleep comes slowly but inevitably, carrying you into another night of quiet reflection and survival. Dawn breaks faintly, pale gold washing over the snow. You rise, brushing frost from your coat and boots, and continue along the road. The world is silent, save for the crunch of boots on snow and the occasional distant crack of ice or snapping tree branch. The cold is constant, but predictable, and that predictability is a strange comfort. The soldiers walking beside you are subdued, conserving energy, their breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. The rhythm of the march, step, step, breathe, has become meditative, almost hypnotic. In this slow-moving world, you begin to notice small details. A broken fence post, a patch of sunlight on ice, the intricate frost patterns on leaves. By late morning, you come across a frozen pond. Children play on the ice, sliding awkwardly with sticks for skates, laughter ringing faintly through the cold. You watch quietly, smiling at the resilience of life in the midst of chaos. Historical fact: by early 1942, German forces had been effectively halted near Moscow, suffering tremendous losses due to weather, stretched supply lines, and resilient Soviet counterattacks. The Eastern Front had become a war of attrition, where winter itself was as formidable an enemy as any army. An obscure tidbit: some Soviet soldiers would carve small figurines from wood or ice, leaving them as gifts for liberated villages or simply to remind themselves of home. Even in war, artistry persisted. By afternoon, you reach a half-collapsed bridge over a frozen stream. A group of engineers is reinforcing it with timber and rope. You lend a hand, the labor grounding you in something tangible. The bridge is more than wood and ice. It's a fragile thread connecting lives, supplies, and hope across the frozen landscape. As evening falls, you find a small barn for shelter. Fires crackle softly, and the smell of burning wood fills the air. You sit near the flame, the carved wooden bear beside you. Its presence is comforting, a reminder of continuity in a world where everything else seems fragile. You think of Hitler, furious and impatient, blaming generals, supplies, and weather. Stalin, patient and calculating, orchestrates his forces with detached precision. Two men, both convinced they are in control, yet both powerless against frost, terrain, and human endurance. Night deepens. The wind moans softly through the trees. The snow drifts silently over rooftops. You lie back, letting sleep come slowly, your breath steady, your body warmed by fire and blankets. The stars emerge above, indifferent and eternal. You drift into sleep, wrapped in the fragile comfort of warmth, firelight, and a small wooden bear. The world continues its slow, patient rhythm, relentless yet oddly soothing. You wake to a pale, diffused light spilling through the skeletal branches of a frost-covered forest. The world is quiet except for the faint creak of ice-laden limbs and the distant murmur of flowing water beneath frozen surfaces. You stretch slowly, savoring the ache in your muscles, a reminder that your body is alive, stubbornly insisting on survival. The soldiers around you are lethargic, bundled in layers of cloth and determination. Their breath fogs the air, forming tiny clouds that vanish too quickly. You note the rhythm of their steps, the way each movement conserves energy while still pushing forward. Survival is now a slow, almost meditative march. By late morning, you reach a ruined village. Roofs have collapsed, walls are fractured, and frost clings to every surface. You move cautiously, noting scattered belongings. A child's doll missing an eye, a broken bowl, a tattered scarf. Small remnants of life persist in strange, poignant ways. Historical fact. After the Soviet winter counteroffensive of 1941–42, German forces were forced into a precarious defensive posture. The combination of harsh weather, overstretched supply lines, and persistent Soviet attacks marked one of the first major strategic setbacks for Hitler on the Eastern Front. An obscure tidbit: some Soviet troops carried tiny notebooks with poems, sketches, or personal reflections. They wrote not just to document the war, but to remind themselves that life exists beyond battlefields. By afternoon, you find a partially frozen river. Ice groans under your boots, the water moving silently beneath. You pause, listening, imagining the world below. Mysterious, indifferent, yet alive. A raven circles above, its black wings stark against the snow. It lands briefly on a nearby branch, watching you with something like curiosity before taking flight again. Evening approaches. You find shelter in a dilapidated barn. Inside, the air is musty but slightly warmer. You light a candle stub and watch its flickering flame, casting shadows that sway gently across wooden beams. You take out your carved wooden bear and place it beside you, feeling its presence as a small comfort in the cold, vast wilderness. You think of Hitler somewhere far east, seething over stalled advances and frozen supplies. You think of Stalin, seated in warmth, observing reports of frozen men, immobile vehicles, and stubborn resistance. Two leaders, both consumed by fear and ambition, yet both powerless against the relentless Russian winter and human perseverance. The wind rises outside, whistling through the cracks of the barn. You lie back, letting the cold seep into your bones, and slowly surrender to sleep, gentle and inevitable, carried on the rhythm of the drifting snow. Dawn is soft, faintly golden, and filtered through a thin veil of clouds. You rise, brushing frost from your coat and boots, and begin walking along a barely visible trail. The snow underfoot muffles sound, turning the world into a quiet cathedral of white and gray. The soldiers accompanying you move with measured steps, conserving energy, eyes narrowed against the cold and wind. The rhythm of their march is hypnotic. Step, breathe, shift weight, repeat. In the quiet, you notice small details. A broken fence post, frost patterns on tree bark, the way sunlight glimmers on ice. Each moment feels both fleeting and eternal. By mid-morning, you reach a frozen field dotted with abandoned German vehicles. Tanks, half buried in snow, rifles sticking out at odd angles, helmets scattered across the plain. You pause, tracing a boot print in the frost, and follow it, imagining the people who walked this path before you. Historical fact: by early 1942, German troops were suffering from severe frostbite, malnutrition, and low morale due to the prolonged Russian winter and overextended supply lines. These conditions, combined with relentless Soviet resistance, significantly hindered their operational effectiveness. An obscure tidbit: some soldiers carved small symbols or charms into their rifle stocks, often initials, animals, or lucky symbols, as talismans against the unpredictable dangers of winter warfare. These small acts offered psychological comfort in an otherwise unforgiving environment. By afternoon, you reach a small village, smoke curling from a few chimneys. Children play cautiously in the snow, oblivious to the devastation around them. Women carry buckets of water from a frozen well, wrapped in layers of cloth and determination. Life persists stubbornly, quietly asserting itself amidst chaos. As night approaches, you find a barn to take shelter. Fires crackle softly, warming your body while the wooden bear sits beside you, steadfast and silent. You reflect on Hitler's frustration at stalled advances and Stalin's patience in orchestrating forces from afar. Both men are powerful yet powerless against the relentless winter and the resilience of those enduring it. The wind rises, whistling through skeletal trees. You lie back, letting the cold seep into your bones, and close your eyes. Sleep comes gently, a soft surrender, carrying you into another night of quiet reflection and survival. The stars above emerge, indifferent and eternal, watching over the endless snow. You wake to a pale, diffused light filtering through frost-laden trees. The air smells sharp, cold, and faintly metallic, carrying the lingering scent of wood smoke and snow. You stretch slowly, every muscle protesting, reminding you that you are still alive. The rhythm of survival, step, breathe, conserve energy has become second nature. The soldiers accompanying you move with quiet determination, their eyes heavy but unwavering. Their boots sink into the powdery snow, leaving behind deep impressions that quickly fade under the gentle snowfall. The world is silent except for the occasional distant crack of ice or snapping branch. Yet in this silence, you feel acutely alive. By mid-morning, you reach a small clearing where remnants of an abandoned village lie. Half-collapsed homes, scattered belongings, and frost-covered fences mark a place that was once full of life. You pause, imagining the families that fled or vanished, and for a moment, allow yourself to mourn quietly. Historical fact: by spring 1942, the German army's advance had slowed dramatically. Continuous Soviet resistance, extreme winter conditions, and overstretched supply lines forced them into defensive positions across the Eastern Front, marking a significant shift in momentum toward the Soviets. An obscure tidbit: Soviet soldiers sometimes carried small pouches of dried herbs or tea leaves to ward off frostbite, both as practical medicine and as a small comfort reminding them of home. By afternoon, you reach a partially frozen stream. Ice groans under your weight, and you tread carefully, feeling the cold seep through your boots despite layers of fabric. You pause, listening to the faint trickle of water beneath, appreciating the quiet, persistent rhythm of life under the ice. You continue toward a distant grove of trees, where the skeletal forms of birch and pine stretch toward the sky. A crow lands on a branch, observing you silently before taking flight. You wave, half joking, half serious. You understand the pace of this war better than anyone else, don't you? Evening falls, and you find shelter in a ruined barn. Fires crackle softly, warming your hands and face. You pull the carved wooden bear from your pack and place it beside you. Its small, silent presence is a comfort in the vast, cold landscape. You think of Hitler, pacing his headquarters in frustration, blaming generals and weather alike. You think of Stalin, patient and calculating, orchestrating his forces with a detached precision. Both are powerful, yet powerless against the relentless winter and the stubborn endurance of ordinary people. The wind rises outside, moaning softly through cracks in the barn walls. You lie back, letting sleep slowly claim you, carried by the rhythm of snow and wind, gentle and inevitable. Dawn breaks in muted gold, spreading across the frozen plains. You rise, brushing snow from your coat and boots, and begin walking once more. The landscape is vast, white, and silent, stretching endlessly under a sky that feels both heavy and indifferent. The soldiers around you are subdued, moving with careful, measured steps. Their breaths form clouds that drift and vanish quickly in the cold air. The rhythm of the march, step, shift weight, breathe, repeat has become a lullaby of survival. Each movement is deliberate, conserving energy while pushing forward into the frozen unknown. By mid-morning, you reach a village partially buried in snow. Smoke curls from a few chimneys, promising warmth and a temporary reprieve. Children play cautiously near the edges of frozen ponds, their laughter soft and fleeting. Women carry water in buckets, wrapped in layers of cloth and determination. Life, fragile yet persistent, endures. Historical fact: by early 1942, Soviet forces had stabilized the front near Moscow, taking advantage of German logistical failures and the harsh winter to regroup, reinforce, and plan counteroffensives. The Eastern Front had shifted into a protracted struggle, testing endurance more than tactics. An obscure tidbit: some Soviet soldiers decorated their rifles with small charms or carvings, often representing home, animals, or religious symbols, believing they could provide protection against bullets or frostbite. By afternoon, you find a small bridge over a frozen stream. Engineers are repairing it with timber and rope, reinforcing the fragile structure against the weight of men and equipment. You lend a hand, feeling the tangible satisfaction of creating something that will carry life across the frozen expanse. As evening falls, you find a small barn to take shelter. Fires crackle, filling the air with warmth and the smell of burning wood. You place the carved wooden bear beside you, feeling its quiet, steadfast presence. You reflect on Hitler's frustration at the stalled German advances and Stalin's patient orchestration of the Soviet forces. Both men are powerful, both consumed by ambition and fear, yet both ultimately powerless against the winter, terrain, and enduring human resilience. The wind rises, howling softly through the skeletal trees. You lie back, letting the cold seep into your bones, your breath slow and steady. Sleep comes gently, as soft and inevitable as falling snow, carrying you through another night of quiet reflection and survival. You wake to the muted gray of early morning, frost coating every surface in a sparkling layer. The air is crisp, almost tangible, filling your lungs with a sharp clarity that wakes your senses as effectively as any alarm. You rise slowly, muscles stiff, boots crunching softly on the powdery snow, and start walking. The soldiers around you move in silent rhythm, heads down against the cold, boots sinking slightly into the snow. Step by step, they carry themselves forward, conserving strength while negotiating the frozen landscape. You notice small details you'd have overlooked before. A single set of bird tracks veering off the trail, the subtle glint of ice on a branch, the way light refracts through frost-covered leaves. By late morning, you reach a ruined village. The structures are skeletal, roofs half-collapsed, doors swinging loosely on rusted hinges. You find a small wooden toy lying in the snow, its colors dulled and paint peeling. You pick it up, brushing off the frost. It's a silent reminder of the lives interrupted here, of ordinary human existence caught between survival and war. Historical fact: during the winter of 1941–42, German troops were suffering catastrophic losses due to frostbite, hunger, and disease. Commanders struggled to maintain discipline, and morale plummeted. The harsh Russian winter was a formidable adversary, often more lethal than the opposing army. An obscure tidbit: Soviet troops occasionally carried small religious icons or talismans sewn into their coats, believing these could protect them against frostbite and misfortune. Faith and superstition intertwined in subtle, almost invisible ways. By afternoon, you reach a frozen river. You pause at its edge, testing the ice carefully. Beneath the frozen surface, the water moves silently, unhurried, indifferent. A lone wolf steps onto the bank, pauses, and watches you before disappearing into the trees. The wild continues, unconcerned with human suffering or strategy. Evening falls as you find shelter in a dilapidated barn. Fires crackle, casting long shadows on the walls. You place the wooden bear beside you, a steadfast companion in a world of uncertainty. The warmth of the fire seeps into your cold fingers and toes, a tiny luxury in the vast expanse of snow and hardship. You think of Hitler pacing and seething at stalled advances. You think of Stalin, patient and calculating, orchestrating positions with a cool detachment. Both men are powerful, yet powerless against the unyielding winter, the terrain, and the human will to endure. The wind rises outside, moaning softly through broken windows and cracks in the barn walls. You lie back, allowing sleep to come slowly, carried by the soft rhythm of snow and wind, gentle and inevitable. Dawn arrives faint and fragile, casting a pale gold light over the frozen expanse. You rise, brushing frost from your coat and boots, and begin walking along a snow-covered trail. The world is muffled and silent, the crunch of boots on snow the only sound punctuating the vast stillness. The soldiers around you move methodically, conserving energy while pressing forward. Each step is deliberate, measured, almost hypnotic. Their breath clouds the air in small puffs that vanish quickly, leaving only the rhythm of movement and the cold biting at exposed skin. By mid-morning, you arrive at a village partially buried in snow. Smoke curls from a few chimneys, hinting at warmth and life inside. Children play cautiously near frozen ponds, sliding on ice or throwing snowballs with delicate precision. Women carry buckets of water from frozen wells, moving with the careful persistence of people accustomed to hardship. Life, fragile yet unyielding, asserts itself amidst devastation. Historical fact: the German failure to seize Moscow in the winter of 1941–42 marked a significant turning point in World War II. The Red Army's ability to regroup, reinforce, and use the harsh winter as a defensive ally fundamentally altered the strategic situation on the Eastern Front. An obscure tidbit: Soviet soldiers sometimes carried small sketches or mementos from home tucked into their packs, using them as talismans or morale boosters. Even amid war, artistry and memory persisted in quiet, intimate forms. By afternoon, you reach a half-collapsed bridge over a frozen stream. Engineers are at work, reinforcing it with timber and rope. You assist them, finding satisfaction in tangible labor that protects life and enables movement across the frozen landscape. Evening arrives. You take shelter in a barn, lighting a small fire that warms your body and soul. The wooden bear rests beside you, its presence grounding you against the cold, vast uncertainty outside. You think of Hitler, frustrated and impatient, blaming generals, supplies, and winter itself. Stalin watches with detached calculation, orchestrating forces with patience. Both are powerful, yet powerless against the relentless cold, terrain, and resilience of ordinary people enduring the snow. The wind rises outside, whistling softly through skeletal trees. You lie back, letting sleep claim you gently, soft and patient as the snow drifting beyond the barn walls. The stars emerge, indifferent and eternal, casting faint light over a world both brutal and beautiful. You wake to a soft, pale light spilling through frost-laden branches. The air is crisp and carries the faint scent of wood smoke mingled with frozen earth. You stretch carefully, letting the stiffness in your muscles remind you that you are alive and still moving, step by step, through a winter that seems endless. The soldiers with you move in quiet formation, conserving energy, eyes narrowed against the biting cold. Each breath forms small clouds that vanish quickly, and the rhythm of their march, step, shift weight, breathe, repeat, feels almost meditative. In this frozen silence, you notice small things. The glint of ice on a broken fence, the delicate patterns of frost on leaves, the subtle curve of a tree branch weighed down by snow. By late morning, you reach a half-ruined village. Roofs have collapsed, doors hang loose, and frost clings to every surface. A small porcelain cup lies in the snow, cracked but stubbornly intact. You pick it up, brushing away frost, imagining the life it once held. The ordinary human traces left behind feel poignant, almost sacred. Historical fact. By early 1942, German troops had suffered immense casualties from frostbite, starvation, and illness. The harsh Russian winter, combined with overstretched supply lines and persistent Soviet resistance, brought the Wehrmacht to a halt, marking one of Hitler's first major defeats in the East. An obscure tidbit: some Soviet soldiers kept small notebooks with doodles, poems, or reflections, not only to document life but to maintain a sense of normalcy and personal identity in the chaos of war. By afternoon, you arrive at a frozen riverbank. The ice groans faintly underfoot as you test its stability. A lone wolf moves along the opposite bank, pausing to regard you before disappearing into the trees. Wildlife continues, indifferent to human conflict, persistent and graceful in its own rhythm. Evening falls. You find shelter in a small, partially intact barn. Fires crackle softly, casting long shadows across frost-covered beams. You place the carved wooden bear beside you, its presence steady and grounding. The warmth seeps into your fingers and toes, a small comfort against the vast, indifferent winter. You think of Hitler pacing in frustration, blaming generals, the terrain, and even the weather. Stalin, patient and calculating, observes from a distance, orchestrating his forces with deliberate precision. Both men are powerful, yet powerless against the cold, the snow, and the resilience of ordinary people enduring it. Outside, the wind whispers through broken windows, moaning softly. You lie back, letting sleep take you, gentle and inevitable, as the snow drifts silently beyond the barn walls. Dawn is faint and gold, spilling softly over snow-laden fields. You rise, brushing frost from your coat and boots, and continue along the quiet trail. The landscape stretches endlessly, muffled and serene under a veil of snow. Every step is deliberate, mindful, conserving energy for the journey ahead. The soldiers with you are subdued, moving with careful, measured steps. Their breaths form clouds that rise and vanish in the cold air, leaving only the slow, hypnotic rhythm of movement. Step, breathe, shift weight, repeat. It is a lullaby of survival in a world suspended between war and winter. By mid-morning, you reach a village partially buried under snow. Smoke curls from a few chimneys, promising warmth and life. Children play cautiously near frozen ponds, laughter ringing softly, while women carry buckets of water from icy wells. Life, fragile yet stubborn, persists in spite of destruction. Historical fact: by spring 1942, the German advance had stalled, and the Soviets had begun stabilizing the front. Harsh winter conditions, logistical failures, and continued resistance marked a turning point on the Eastern Front, signaling that the Wehrmacht could be slowed and eventually pushed back. An obscure tidbit: soldiers sometimes carved small figurines from ice or wood and left them in villages as silent markers of passage or small gifts for children. A fragile human gesture amidst the brutality of war. By afternoon, you reach a half-collapsed bridge over a frozen stream. Engineers work to reinforce it with timber and rope. You lend a hand, finding satisfaction in tangible labor that ensures the safe passage of people, supplies, and hope. Evening falls and you find a barn to shelter in. Fires crackle softly, filling the air with warmth and the comforting smell of wood smoke. The carved wooden bear rests beside you, silent but steadfast. You reflect on Hitler's impatience at stalled advances and Stalin's patient orchestration of his forces. Both men are powerful, driven by fear and ambition, yet both ultimately powerless against the winter, the terrain, and the enduring resilience of ordinary people. The wind rises outside, whistling softly through skeletal trees. You lie back, letting the cold seep into your bones and your mind drift. Sleep comes gently, patient as the snow falling outside, carrying you through another night in a frozen, quiet world, calm despite the distant chaos of war. You wake to a delicate light filtering through skeletal trees, the world muted in a soft gray haze. Frost glitters on every surface, coating branches, fences, and the faint footprints of creatures long gone. You stretch slowly, savoring the ache in your muscles. A reminder that you are alive, that you have survived another night under the indifferent gaze of winter. The soldiers around you move with quiet deliberation, conserving energy against the biting cold. Step, shift weight, breathe, repeat, a rhythm both hypnotic and necessary. Small details capture your attention. The faint curve of a frozen branch, a bird hopping cautiously across the snow, the way sunlight fractures into prisms through icicles. Even in the midst of war, beauty persists. By late morning, you reach a ruined village. Half-collapsed homes and frost-covered walls tell stories of lives interrupted, of families who fled or vanished. You find a small porcelain cup in the snow, its delicate form surviving against the odds. You pick it up, brushing away frost, imagining the moments it once held. Tea shared, bread broken, stories told. Historical fact: during the winter of 1941 to 42, German troops endured massive losses from frostbite, hunger, and illness. These harsh conditions, combined with overextended supply lines and relentless Soviet resistance, halted their advance and marked a turning point in the Eastern Front campaign. An obscure tidbit: some Soviet soldiers kept small notebooks to record sketches, poems, or personal reflections. These intimate acts were more than documentation. They were a lifeline to humanity in a world consumed by conflict. By afternoon, you reach a frozen river. Ice groans beneath your boots, and you tread carefully, aware of its hidden dangers. A lone wolf moves along the far bank, observing silently before slipping back into the trees. The wild persists, indifferent to human strife, a reminder of nature's enduring presence. Evening falls as you find a small barn to take shelter. Fires crackle, casting dancing shadows across frost-lined walls. The carved wooden bear sits beside you, a quiet companion in a vast, cold landscape. You think of Hitler, furious over stalled advances and failed logistics, blaming generals, terrain, and winter alike. Stalin, patient and calculating, watches from a distance, orchestrating troop movements and logistics with precision. Both men are powerful, yet powerless against the winter, the land, and the resilience of ordinary people enduring it. The wind rises outside, whispering through cracks in the barn walls. You lie back, letting sleep come slowly and gently, as soft and inevitable as the snow falling beyond the shelter. Evening falls as you find a small barn to take shelter. Fires crackle, casting dancing shadows across frost-lined walls. The carved wooden bear sits beside you, a quiet companion in a vast, cold landscape. You think of Hitler, furious over stalled advances and failed logistics, blaming generals, terrain, and winter alike. Stalin, patient and calculating, watches from a distance, orchestrating troop movements and logistics with precision. Both men are powerful, yet powerless against the winter, the land, and the resilience of ordinary people enduring it. The wind rises outside, whispering through cracks in the barn walls. You lie back, letting sleep come slowly and gently, as soft and inevitable as the snow falling beyond the shelter. Dawn arrives, pale gold spilling over the snow-covered plains. You rise, brushing frost from your coat and boots, and begin walking along a faint trail. The world stretches endlessly in muted whites and grays, muffled and silent except for the crunch of boots against snow. The soldiers with you move deliberately, conserving strength with each step. Breath clouds rise and vanish into the cold air, leaving only the rhythm of movement. Step, shift weight, breathe, repeat. The monotony is almost meditative, grounding you in the present despite the chaos that surrounds the front lines. By mid-morning, you reach a village partially covered by snow. Smoke curls from a few chimneys, promising warmth and temporary reprieve. Children play cautiously on frozen ponds, their laughter soft and fleeting. Women carry water from frozen wells, wrapped in thick layers, embodying the quiet persistence of life in adversity. Historical fact: by spring 1942, the German advance toward Moscow had been halted entirely. Soviet forces, using both harsh winter conditions and strategic defensive positions, were able to regroup and launch counteroffensives, beginning a shift in momentum on the Eastern Front. An obscure tidbit: soldiers often carved tiny figures from ice or wood, leaving them as gifts or markers in villages they passed. These small gestures persisted as a reminder of humanity amidst devastation. By afternoon, you reach a half-collapsed bridge over a frozen stream. Engineers reinforce it with timber and rope, and you assist in the work. The bridge represents more than utility. It is a fragile conduit of survival, connection, and hope. As evening falls, you find shelter in a barn. Fires crackle, warming both body and spirit. The carved wooden bear rests beside you, offering a comforting presence. You reflect on Hitler's growing frustration and Stalin's meticulous patience. Both are powerful men, yet powerless against the relentless winter, the landscape, and the determination of ordinary people. Outside, the wind rises, whistling softly through skeletal trees. You lie back, allowing sleep to claim you, slow and gentle, as soft as the snow drifting beyond the barn walls. The stars emerge, eternal and indifferent, casting faint light across the vast, frozen world. You wake to a muted glow of morning filtering through frost-laden trees. The snow crunches under your boots as you rise slowly, every muscle stiff yet reminding you that you are alive and moving through this vast, silent winter. The air smells faintly of pine and wood smoke, sharp and clean, a small reminder that life persists even in the most desolate places. The soldiers around you move quietly, conserving energy with careful steps. Breath clouds rise and vanish, and the rhythm of their march, step, shift weight, breathe, repeat, has become hypnotic. You notice the smallest details, frost patterns like lace on branches, the curve of a snow-draped fence, a distant crow perched motionless in a tree, observing the world below. By late morning, you reach a ruined village. Roofs are collapsed, walls fractured, and frost clings to every surface. You spot a child's boot half buried in snow. Picking it up, you imagine the small human life that once wore it, the ordinary moments interrupted by war. Even in devastation, tiny reminders of life endure. Historical fact: the winter of 1941-42 devastated German forces on the Eastern Front, causing massive casualties from frostbite, starvation, and disease. Overextended supply lines and relentless Soviet resistance made winter one of Hitler's most formidable opponents. An obscure tidbit: Soviet soldiers occasionally carried small charms or icons sewn into their coats, believing these could protect them from frostbite, bullets, or misfortune. A mix of faith, superstition, and hope persisted even amidst extreme adversity. By afternoon, you reach a frozen riverbank. Ice groans faintly under your boots. Beneath the surface, water moves silently, persistent and indifferent. A lone wolf steps onto the far bank, observing you briefly before vanishing into the trees. Nature continues in its rhythm, unbothered by human conflict. Evening arrives and you find shelter in a barn. Fires crackle softly, warming your hands and face. You place the carved wooden bear beside you, its presence comforting in this vast, frozen world. You think of Hitler, seething over stalled advances and harsh winter conditions. Stalin, in contrast, observes quietly, orchestrating troops and supplies with patient precision. Both men are powerful, yet powerless against frost, terrain, and human endurance. The wind rises outside, whistling through cracks in the barn walls. You lie back, letting sleep claim you, slow and gentle, as inevitable as the snow drifting silently over rooftops and trees. Dawn breaks pale and golden, brushing the snow-covered landscape in soft light. You rise, brushing frost from your coat and boots, and begin walking along a faint trail through the frozen forest. The world is silent, muffled under white, the crunch of boots on snow the only sound marking time and movement. The soldiers with you move deliberately, conserving strength and energy. Each step is purposeful, measured, a rhythm that is both meditative and necessary. Breath clouds rise, float briefly, and vanish into the cold air, leaving only the steady cadence of motion in the stillness. By mid-morning, you reach a village partially buried under snow. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys, promising warmth and a brief respite. Children play carefully on frozen ponds, laughter soft and fleeting. Women carry water from frozen wells, wrapped in thick layers. Life persists stubbornly, quietly asserting itself against adversity. Historical fact: by spring 1942, the stalled German advance had forced Hitler to reconsider his strategies. The Red Army, using winter conditions and defensive positioning, stabilized the front and began slowly regaining momentum, proving resilience could overcome even the mightiest armies. An obscure tidbit: soldiers would sometimes carve tiny figurines or symbols into wood or ice, leaving them in villages as signs of passage, protection, or small gifts for those enduring hardship. Even amid destruction, human creativity and hope persisted. By afternoon, you reach a half-collapsed bridge over a frozen stream. Engineers reinforce it with timber and rope, and you assist, finding satisfaction in tangible labor that sustains life and connection. Evening falls and you find shelter in a barn. Fires crackle softly, the warmth seeping into your bones. You place the carved wooden bear beside you, a steadfast companion in a world of frost and uncertainty. You reflect on Hitler's frustration and impatience and Stalin's methodical patience. Both are powerful, yet neither can fully control the snow, the terrain, or the resilient human spirit that persists against the odds. The wind rises outside, whistling through skeletal trees. You lie back, letting sleep come slowly and gently, soft as the snow drifting silently beyond the barn walls. The stars emerge, indifferent and eternal, casting faint light over a quiet, frozen world. You wake to a faint silver light spilling across the snow, the world muffled and still. Frost clings to every branch, fence post, and boot print, sparkling like tiny diamonds in the pale morning. You stretch slowly, each stiff muscle a reminder that you are still moving, still alive, still enduring. The soldiers around you move silently, conserving energy, eyes hooded against the cold. Their breaths rise in little clouds that disappear quickly into the air. Step, shift weight, breathe, a quiet rhythm that has become a meditative mantra. You notice small details: the way the frost bends under the weight of a branch, the faint tracks of a rabbit disappearing into the forest, the slow glint of sunlight on ice. By late morning, you arrive at a partially ruined village. Roofs have caved in, doors swing loosely, and frost encrusts the walls. A child's mitten lies abandoned in the snow. Picking it up, you imagine the small hands that once wore it, the laughter that once filled these spaces. Small traces of life persist in poignant, almost sacred ways. Historical fact: during the winter of 1941–42, German forces suffered catastrophic losses from frostbite, malnutrition, and disease. Harsh weather and overextended supply lines made this winter one of Hitler's most formidable enemies, reshaping the Eastern Front entirely. An obscure tidbit: Soviet soldiers sometimes carried small talismans, carved wood, coins, or simple charms, believing these could protect them from frostbite, bullets, or misfortune. Even in extremity, superstition and hope intertwined. By afternoon, you reach a frozen river. Ice groans underfoot as you test each step, and you pause to watch the water move silently beneath. A lone fox darts along the bank, pausing briefly to regard you before vanishing into the woods. Nature continues, indifferent and unhurried, while humans struggle against circumstance. Evening falls as you find shelter in a barn. Fires crackle softly, casting dancing shadows on frost-lined beams. You place the carved wooden bear beside you, a steadfast companion in this quiet, frozen world. You think of Hitler, pacing in frustration at stalled advances, and Stalin, orchestrating forces with patient precision. Both men are powerful, yet powerless against the frost, the terrain, and the endurance of ordinary people. The wind rises, moaning softly through the barn's cracks. You lie back, letting sleep envelop you slowly and gently, carried by the rhythm of snow and wind, inevitable and soft. Dawn arrives in pale gold, spilling lightly over frozen fields. You rise, brushing frost from your coat and boots, and begin walking along a barely visible trail. The world is hushed, muffled beneath layers of snow, the crunch of boots marking your passage through a still and quiet landscape. The soldiers with you move carefully, preserving energy with every step. Breath clouds rise and vanish, leaving only the slow rhythm of motion. Step, shift weight, breathe, repeat. In the monotony, you notice subtle details. Sunlight refracting through icicles, the curve of a snow-laden branch, a lone crow perched motionless atop a fence post. By mid-morning, you reach a village partially buried in snow. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys, hinting at warmth and fleeting life. Children play cautiously on frozen ponds, laughter soft and ephemeral. Women carry water from frozen wells, their movements deliberate, resilient, and quiet. Life endures, stubborn and tenacious, amidst the ruins of conflict. Historical fact: by spring 1942, the German advance had effectively stalled near Moscow, giving Soviet forces crucial time to regroup, reinforce, and prepare counteroffensives. Winter, terrain, and local resistance had combined to halt what had seemed unstoppable. An obscure tidbit: soldiers would carve tiny figures into ice or wood, leaving them behind as markers, tokens of hope, or gifts for villagers. These fragile acts of creativity persisted even in the face of destruction. By afternoon, you arrive at a half-collapsed bridge over a frozen stream. Engineers work to reinforce it with timber and rope. You lend a hand, feeling satisfaction in creating something that allows survival, movement, and connection across the frozen landscape. Evening falls and you take shelter in a barn. Fires crackle softly, warming your body and heart. The carved wooden bear rests beside you, a small but steadfast presence in a harsh and uncertain world. You reflect on Hitler's impatience and rage, and Stalin's quiet, calculated patience. Both men are powerful, yet ultimately powerless against the snow, terrain, and human resilience. The wind rises outside, whistling through skeletal trees. You lie back, letting sleep come gently, slowly, like soft snow drifting beyond the barn walls. The stars emerge, indifferent and eternal, casting a faint glow over the frozen expanse. You wake to a pale, fragile light brushing across the snow-laden landscape. Frost glitters like tiny crystals on branches, fences, and footprints. The cold is sharp, biting, yet invigorating in its clarity. You stretch slowly, feeling the stiffness in your muscles as proof that you are still alive, still moving, still enduring. The soldiers around you move quietly, conserving energy. Each step is careful, deliberate. Step, shift weight, breathe. The rhythm of survival has become almost meditative. In this stillness, you notice the little things: the curve of a snow-covered branch, the glint of ice on a frozen puddle, the distant caw of a crow breaking the silence. By late morning, you reach a ruined village. Roofs have collapsed, walls are fractured, and frost clings to every surface. A child's scarf lies abandoned, half buried in snow. You pick it up, brushing away frost, imagining the small life it once belonged to. Even amidst devastation, human traces persist in poignant ways. Historical fact: the harsh Russian winter of 1941-42 inflicted far greater losses on German troops than many battles. Frostbite, starvation, and disease combined with overstretched supply lines to halt the German advance, marking one of the first major strategic failures for Hitler. An obscure tidbit: Soviet soldiers often carried tiny mementos or charms sewn into their coats, believing they offered protection from frost, bullets, or misfortune. These small rituals were fragile anchors in a chaotic world. By afternoon, you reach a frozen riverbank. The ice groans faintly beneath your boots. Beneath the surface, water continues its silent, unhurried flow. A lone fox appears on the far bank, watching briefly before slipping back into the trees. Nature persists, indifferent to human conflict yet teaching endurance through quiet persistence. Evening falls and you find shelter in a barn. Fires crackle softly, casting shadows across frost-lined beams. You place the carved wooden bear beside you, a small, steady companion amidst the cold and uncertainty. You think of Hitler, pacing in frustration, seething over stalled advances and winter's cruelty. Stalin, patient and calculating, observes from a distance, orchestrating troops with precise timing. Both are powerful yet powerless against frost, terrain, and human resilience. The wind rises outside, whispering through cracks in the barn walls. You lie back, letting sleep claim you slowly, gently, soft as snow drifting beyond the shelter. Dawn arrives in muted gold, brushing snow-covered fields with soft light. You rise, brushing frost from your coat and boots, and continue along a barely visible trail through the frozen forest. The world is hushed, muffled beneath snow, the crunch of boots marking time and movement through quiet vastness. The soldiers with you move carefully, conserving energy. Each step is measured, every breath a small cloud vanishing into cold air. The rhythm of motion, step, shift weight, breathe, repeat, becomes a meditative lullaby of survival. You notice small details: sunlight refracting through icicles, frost patterns on leaves, the subtle curve of a branch weighed down by snow. By mid-morning, you reach a village partially covered in snow. Smoke curls from chimneys, promising warmth and fleeting life. Children play cautiously near frozen ponds, laughter soft and ephemeral. Women carry water from frozen wells, wrapped in layers. Life persists stubbornly, quietly asserting itself amidst the devastation. Historical fact: by spring 1942, German forces were effectively halted near Moscow. The Red Army, using winter conditions and defensive terrain, stabilized the front and began counteroffensives, demonstrating that resilience and strategy could overcome even the most formidable invading army. An obscure tidbit: soldiers carved tiny figurines or symbols from ice or wood, leaving them in villages as markers, talismans, or small gifts. Even in destruction, human creativity persisted in subtle, fragile ways. By afternoon, you reach a half-collapsed bridge over a frozen stream. Engineers reinforce it with timber and rope, and you assist, finding satisfaction in tangible labor that sustains life, movement, and connection. Evening falls and you find a barn to shelter in. Fires crackle softly, warming both body and soul. The carved wooden bear rests beside you, a comforting presence amidst frost and uncertainty. You reflect on Hitler's growing frustration and Stalin's patient orchestration of his forces. Both are powerful, yet ultimately powerless against the snow, terrain, and resilience of ordinary people enduring harsh winter. The wind rises outside, whistling through skeletal trees. You lie back, letting sleep come slowly and gently, soft as snow drifting silently beyond the barn walls. The stars emerge, indifferent and eternal, casting faint light across the frozen expanse. You wake to a soft, silver-gray light filtering through the bare branches of frost-laden trees. The snow sparkles faintly, like scattered diamonds under the morning sky. You stretch carefully, letting each stiff muscle remind you that survival is its own quiet triumph. The soldiers with you move slowly, deliberately, conserving energy with each step. Step, shift weight, breathe. The rhythm of survival has become meditative. Breath clouds drift and vanish in the cold, leaving only the quiet crunch of boots on snow. You notice the smallest details. A bird hopping cautiously between branches, sunlight refracting through ice-covered leaves, the gentle bend of a branch weighed down by frost. By late morning, you reach another ruined village. Roofs have collapsed, fences lie in fragments, and frost clings stubbornly to every surface. A child's scarf lies abandoned in the snow. You pick it up, brushing away frost, imagining the life that once existed here. The ordinary routines interrupted by war. Even amidst devastation, traces of humanity endure. Historical fact. The winter of 1941–42 was catastrophic for German troops on the Eastern Front. Frostbite, starvation, and disease inflicted greater losses than many battles, halting Hitler's advance and reshaping the strategic landscape of the war. An obscure tidbit. Some Soviet soldiers would carve small icons, initials, or symbols into wood or ice, believing these acts could bring protection or good luck. Such gestures persisted quietly amid chaos, reminders of hope and creativity. By afternoon, you reach a frozen riverbank. Ice groans faintly beneath your boots. Beneath the frozen surface, water continues its slow, relentless movement. A lone wolf steps lightly along the far bank, pausing to watch you before disappearing into the trees. Nature persists, indifferent to human conflict, teaching endurance through quiet, patient motion. Evening falls. You take shelter in a barn, fires crackling softly, casting flickering shadows across frost-lined walls. You place the carved wooden bear beside you, a silent, steadfast companion. You think of Hitler, furious over stalled advances and frozen supplies. You think of Stalin, patient and calculating, orchestrating his forces from afar. Both are powerful, yet powerless against frost, terrain, and the resilience of ordinary people enduring the snow. The wind rises outside, whistling through broken windows. You lie back, letting sleep come gently, soft and slow, carried by the rhythm of snow and wind. Dawn comes slowly, pale gold spilling across the endless snow. You rise, brushing frost from your coat and boots, and begin walking along a faint trail. The world is quiet, muffled under snow, and the crunch of boots is the only sound breaking the stillness. The soldiers with you move methodically, preserving energy with each deliberate step. Each breath forms a fleeting cloud that disappears quickly, leaving only the steady rhythm of motion. Step, shift weight, breathe. A quiet meditation in a world of frozen hardship. By mid-morning, you reach a village partially covered in snow. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys, promising warmth and fleeting life. Children play cautiously near frozen ponds, laughter soft and ephemeral. Women carry water from icy wells, wrapped in thick layers. Life persists, stubborn and delicate, quietly asserting itself amidst devastation. Historical fact. The German advance had stalled completely by spring 1942, giving the Soviets time to regroup and plan counteroffensives. Winter, terrain, and human resilience turned the tide on the Eastern Front, demonstrating that the harshest elements could become allies for those who endured them. An obscure tidbit. Soldiers carved small figurines or symbols from ice or wood, leaving them behind as markers, talismans, or tokens of hope. These fragile gestures of creativity and remembrance persisted amidst the devastation, subtle reminders that humanity survives even in harshest conditions. By afternoon, you cross a half-collapsed bridge over a frozen stream, helping engineers reinforce it with timber and rope. The bridge is more than a structure. It is a lifeline, a fragile connection across a frozen world, a testament to persistence and collaboration. Evening falls and you take shelter in a barn. Fires crackle softly, the warmth seeping into your tired body. The carved wooden bear rests beside you, silent but steady, a small comfort amidst the vast, frozen landscape. You think of Hitler, furious and impatient, frustrated by stalled advances and harsh conditions. Stalin, in contrast, orchestrates his forces with patient precision. Both men are powerful, yet ultimately powerless against snow, frost, terrain, and the enduring resilience of ordinary people. The wind rises outside, whispering through skeletal trees and broken windows. You lie back, letting sleep envelope you completely. And now, slowly, gently, the story eases into quiet reflection. The barn's warmth, the crackle of the fire, the snow drifting silently beyond, the faint twinkle of distant stars above, all combine to form a soft, infinite lullaby. Breath slows, thoughts fade. The carved wooden bear, patient and steady, sits beside you as the cold world outside recedes. Each flicker of light, each sigh of wind, becomes a rhythm to soothe the mind and body. You feel your heartbeat slow, your limbs relax, and your mind float along with the drifting snow. In this gentle pause, all fear, all fury, all chaos of the world outside melts into quiet. Sleep deepens, carrying you, without rush or worry, into the tender embrace of night. Everything softens, everything stills, and for a moment, the world itself feels calm, timeless, patient, and entirely at peace.